So the second question was referring to a particular game. That was about the game between Deutsche BA and Lufthansa, and what the second Nash equilibrium might actually mean. Okay, so where does the second Nash equilibrium come from in this game? Right, so you remember we're looking for equilibria. We have the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium where Deutsche BA enters and Lufthansa decides not to start a price war. So that didn't cause any problems. What's more problematic was the question of why is this a Nash equilibrium? Why is it a Nash equilibrium for Deutsche BA not to enter and for Lufthansa to start a price war if it doesn't even get to a price war? Okay. Now, for that, what we need to do, what we need to be aware of is what the precise definition of the Nash equilibrium is. Okay. So, a Nash equilibrium is a combination of strategies such that no player can deviate unilaterally from his or her current strategy to improve his or her payoffs. So, what does that mean? What's important here? So it's a combination of strategies of multiple players. No player can deviate unilaterally. Unilaterally means that we keep the other strategy as given and we change one player's strategy, okay, to improve his or her payoff. So you cannot actually be more profitable if you change, assuming that the other player sticks to what they do. So that is therefore a natural resting point of the game. Now, one thing I think that wasn't quite clear was what a strategy actually means. So what is a strategy here? A strategy, and we used that again in the first week, the extended working definition for this course is that a strategy is a player's plan of actions in a game given any possible circumstance. So important here is the player's plan of action in a game. We're making this plan before we start the game, given any possible circumstance. Okay? Given any time I might have to make a decision, I have to have a plan before the game starts. That's the concept of a strategy. Okay? So, again, thinking about what the Nash equilibrium might be and thinking about the red Nash equilibrium here. So, Deutsche BA decides not to enter the market. That does not foreclose or that does not preclude Lufthansa from having a plan of action. They have to have a plan of action of what they would do if Deutsche BA actually did enter. Okay, so if they plan on starting a price war if Deutsche BA enters, then that's a strategy. Okay, and therefore, if Deutsche BA does not enter, then they have no incentive to do anything else, right? Because if Deutsche BA doesn't enter, then that part of the game is irrelevant, right? So they have no incentive to change their plan. On the other hand, what if Lufthansa starts a price war at this point? What if they have communicated their strategy, we're going to start a price war here? In that case, Deutsche BA is better off not entering, because if they entered the market, Lufthansa would start a price war and they would lose 500,000 or 500 million. Okay, so here in this case, if Lufthansa sticks to where they are, Deutsche BA has no incentive to deviate. If, on the other hand, Deutsche BA sticks to what they do, Lufthansa has no incentive to deviate. So therefore, if we combine the two strategies, Deutsche BA sticks to what they do if Lufthansa sticks to what they do, and Lufthansa sticks to what they do if Deutsche BA stick to what they do. Okay, so therefore, that is a second Nash equilibrium. Okay. Now, as we know from week one, we know that the second Nash equilibrium is not particularly rational, right? It's not rational because, of course, Deutsche BA should not believe that Lufthansa wants to start a price war, because this would not be rational behavior at this point, right? They would make 0 here, and they could do much better by making 400, right? That's why in the end we settled on Nash equilibrium 1. That's the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium, meaning that Deutsche BA enters and Lufthansa does not start a price war. Okay? Very good. So that was the second question that was discussed quite vigorously, and I can tell you straight away, these are not trivial questions. These are completely rational or sensible questions to ask, and I get a lot of these questions also in my regular classes, in my presence classes at the university. Okay, now. Another very interesting point was referring to backward induction and how we use backward induction and how cooperation and backward induction somehow go together. So how can we have cooperation? Can we achieve cooperation if we solve a game by backward induction? So recall what backward induction means. Backward induction can be used to analyze repeated games with finite repetitions. So we have a certain endpoint. And we do it by reasoning backwards in time. We look at the last stage of the game and we determine the best course of action at that time, right? So we're at the very end of the game. What's the best thing we can do? With this information, so we've solved the game in the last period. With this information, we can determine what to do in the penultimate stage. And we continue this process until the best strategy for every game is found. Okay? And that gives us the one Nash equilibrium that's subgame perfect. Okay? So we make sure that they behave optimally at each point in the game. So following backward induction, that refers to the Olympic Games game, the contractor will deliver low quality in all the months. And the organizing committee will always renegotiate a lower price. So they will always come up with reasons why the agreed delivery was not perfect, and so they will always negotiate down. And the outcome of this is triggered by the fact that in the last stage of the game, there's no further threat of retaliation. Remember, this is the last time we meet. And in the last time we meet, I don't care about being a nice guy anymore, right? I don't care. Right? Because in the future there are no payoffs. There are no payoffs to be gained from that business relationship. So I don't behave cooperatively. But once we've solved that, we know what's going to happen in the last period, and then we can go forward one period to the penultimate one, and we already know that whatever we do, there's not going to be cooperation in the last period. So again, nothing's going to happen. So cooperation breaks down completely if we have this end game effect, right? It's important that the game unfolds, it unravels from the end to the very start. And this is going to hold for any prisoner's dilemma with finite repetitions, right? So whenever we have a prisoner's dilemma that we repeat a finite number of times, a limited number of times, then cooperation will just break down immediately. Okay, so another question that was asked, again, it was about cooperation and about repeated games in infinite repetition. There were some issues about the formulae that we put up. So again, remember, this was about De Beers, this was about diamonds, and about the diamond cartel. So for each country, what was interesting here is that we have for each country, if we cooperate this year and charge the monopoly price, we make 50 million divided by 2 because we share the market, and we do that this year, next year, and the following year, and so on and so forth. If we deviate this year, so if we charge a lower price, then we get 49 million. So we just assume that we undercut our rival by a little bit, and we take pretty much all the market. And that's what, by assumption, we say that that gives us almost the full monopoly profits, gives us 49 million. However, then cooperation breaks down and we get 0 from there onwards. Okay? So that's again why, well, that's when the trigger strategy is relevant, right? So we play the trigger strategy, meaning that once someone cheats, we're always going to go down to marginal cost. Now, the interesting bit here is that the payoffs here are uncertain because we don't know if the game actually continues. It continues with a probability of p. So can we draw this? Can we calculate this as a as a formula? Can we simplify this? So cooperating this year gives us half the monopoly profits. And we multiply that by 1 divided by 1 minus p. And we're going to go into why this is exactly 1 divided by 1 minus p in a second. P is, of course, between 0 and 1. So it's a probability that is either very low, so the likelihood that the game is going to continue is small, or it's going to be very high, it's going to be close to 1, if the likelihood that tomorrow there's going to be another market for diamonds, and the day after tomorrow there's going to be another market for diamonds, and so on, that's going to be very high. That's going to refer to a high value of P. If we deviate this year, we're going to get 49 million, but we're only going to get it once. Okay, so 49 million today, after that, no profits anymore. But what interested you is how we get to this 1 divided by 1 minus p value. Okay, so, and that basically refers to the fact that we have to multiply in each period the payoff we get in the period with the likelihood that we're actually going to get to that period, right? So in the first period, we know that the game exists. So we make 1 times 50 million divided by 2. Then in the next period, there's only a likelihood of p that this is going to go on, right? So we're going to have p times 50 million divided by 2, right? P times half the monopoly profits. Now, if it went on for the first period, then there's again a likelihood that from the second to the next period, so from the next year to the year after, the game again, the market again breaks down. So the likelihood of that, or the likelihood that even 2 periods from now we're going to have the market is p times p, so it's p squared. And then in the year after, in t plus 3, it's going to be p to the power of 3, or p cubed. Okay, so every time we want to look if this goes on for 1 more period, we have to multiply it by the likelihood that the market is going to survive until that period. So it's going to be p in year 1, in the next year, p squared in t plus 2, p cubed in t plus 3. The likelihood that there's still going to be a market in t plus 100 is p to the power of 100, right? So it's pretty much like that. And so the good thing is that smart mathematicians have figured out a way of not having to write out all of this until infinity, right? So because there's a possibility, there's a tiny possibility that this market is still going to be alive in t plus 15,000, right? And you really don't want to write out every single payoff from today till t plus 15,000. And so the nice thing is that you have this infinite geometric progression, which is a plus k times a plus k squared times a plus k cubed times a, and so on and so forth, forever, right? If the absolute value of k is below 1, right? So if it's somewhere between 0 and 1. And the good thing is this simplifies to a divided by 1 minus k. Okay, so how can we translate that? Well, a is, of course, 50 million divided by 2. K is the likelihood that there's going to be a market tomorrow. So k is equal to p. And then therefore, we can simplify and we get 50 divided by 2 times 1 divided by 1 minus p. And that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so this is how we get to this geometric series. Now, therefore, just looking at that is going to give us 50 divided by 2 times 1 divided by 1 minus p. Okay, so much for the simple version of the cooperation game. Let's now make it a bit more complicated, and let's have a look at the factors influencing cooperation. So here we get, again, the importance of the future, right? P, in a sense, was a proxy for how important the future is to us. And we just said, well, this is all going to refer to the fact that there's a likelihood that the market is just going to break down. Now, of course, there's other things that go on if you invest money in the future. And in particular, there's an interest rate that's attached to investing into the future. So if the future becomes more important here, it means that the interest rate decreases. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but let's think about it for a second. if the interest rate decreases, then actually today's payoff and tomorrow's payoff are almost the same, right? So if I could invest $100 today and the interest rate is very small, then $100 today would almost be the same as $100 tomorrow. Okay? If on the other hand, the interest rate is very high, this means that $100 today are worth a lot more to me than getting $100 tomorrow, because I could invest it at an interest rate of I during that year. Okay, so what we did here is we gave a formula and multiplied this simple expression with 1 divided by 1 minus brackets 1 divided by 1 plus I close bracket. Okay, and that had to be larger than the profit from deviating ones. And so again, apologies and thanks very much for pointing that out. There was a slight mistake in the formula that we showed you, and we're going to replace that. But what the basic simplification here is going to be, it's going to be 1 divided by 1 minus, and that's then P divided by 1 plus I. Okay, so that is the correct formula if we include both the likelihood that the market is going to survive and the interest rate. Okay, and then finally, another question that we got was whether complementers can be competitors or whether competitors can be complementers, right? And what's important here is in particular that we're referring to products, right? So products can be complementary and competitive at the same time, right? So let's again, I think, take a look at this one. Here, substitute goods can have complementary effects. So it's pretty clear that a substitute good, would be, for example, cloth shops in a mall. Okay, so you get different types of cloth, but if you're going to buy cloth in one shop, you're not going to buy it in the other, right? So they're substitutes. But on the other hand, if both of those shops are in the same mall, they both benefit from the fact that lots of people go into the mall. So if one of the firms, if one of the shops starts a promotion that gets more people into the mall, then they become complementers, right? Because both of them benefit from having lots of people in the mall, right? So here we get a price cut of the substitute good, decreases market share on the one hand because they're substitutes, but it also increases the size of the market, and in some circumstances, under some circumstances, this can lead to a positive net effect. Okay, so here, if shop A cuts their price, that's going to make the whole mall more attractive, and then therefore shop B sales may increase because additional consumers come into the mall. So go shopping in the mall. Okay, guys, so that's pretty much it from the two of us. Now, this was for weeks 1, 2, and 3. These were the questions that we picked out that we felt really needed some discussing, some clarification based on the questions and comments that you made in the forum. All that's left for me to say now is do stick to the course. Do watch the videos. Do the quizzes. You've already come quite a long way, and so that now you're already past the halfway line. Stick to it. I think it's going to be rewarding. Do keep on contributing. Ask questions. We're very much looking forward to your feedback. That's it. See you very soon.